Hi people, Morgan Ravenberg here. In this video, I'll be discussing, and I'll try to keep it as short as possible, how to deal with psychosis from a neutral perspective. This applies to occultists and people that have a general interest in the occult and clairvoyant people overall, or people that are loosely labeled psychics, as well as from a neutral perspective. So basically, anyone that falls within this subject category. um, it's no it's no secret that people, okay, generally speaking, especially people, more often than not, people that possess clairvoyant faculties, or people that generally speaking have an interest in the occult and things of spiritual nature relating to summoning spirits, working with astral energies and energetic forces or higher forces, if you will. It's no secret that these people, the very majority of them, based on my own knowledge and experience, possess character traits that are deemed undesirable by society's norms or standards, or traits that are seen as psychosis, or that are loosely labeled psychosis. We all know how the saying goes, you know. That's also a reason for why people that have an interest in the occult are labeled sometimes by airheads. By airheads, I mean people that are completely stupid and oblivious to higher forces. Basically, the most superficialist of people, they are seen and or labeled as how should I put this? They're seen and or labeled as insane. You know the saying, you know, you're not right in the head, you're insane, you're nuts, you're this, you're that, because you're clairvoyant, or because you just briefly want to discuss something of a clairvoyant nature. I've had people tell me that, you name it, and my advice has always been, know what you share and whom you share it with. The phrase "don't throw pearls to swine" applies like no other here, but I don't even call these kind of people swines. I call them vermin, because even swines are better from my perspective. But yeah, in any case, point is that I'm obviously, since I saying what I just said, my first tip would obviously be to know what you share and whom you share it with. Don't just go around sharing your occult knowledge. If you're someone that's into the occult or into the spiritual, just don't go flab it out and share it with everyone and so on. There is a good distinct reason that occultism and esoterica in general is not mainstream. It's quite the opposite of mainstream. It's only meant for a select kind of individual or series of individuals, which are a hopeless minority on a global scale. I don't know, roughly estimated, this is literally just a guess and my opinion at the same time. How many people in the world have an interest in the occult compared to the global population? I think it's literally less than 5% even, or something. But yeah, that's my point in any case. Know what you share and whom you share it with. Unless you want to find yourself in a situation where a heated argument or even worse can follow, because people that are too stupid to understand what it is that you're talking about or don't appreciate it will react in an unfavorable way, with fear, with either fear or reluctancy, or with awkwardness, with uneasiness, or with ridicule or mockery. And you don't want any of those. But yeah, that was just a brief sideline. In any case, getting back to the core of the topic, examples of these character traits that I can give are neurosis, paranoia, anxiety. The average person that I've met that has an interest in the occult suffers from multiple of these, suffering in a metaphorical context. Some of them suffer literally, others in a metaphorical way. And yours truly is also not excluded from that. Two of my character traits, for example, negative character traits that can be labeled as psychosis, are neurosis and what's the other one again? Delusions. Yeah, those are two of my most notable character traits, and I have written an article on this, in which this video will be embedded after I'm done recording it, obviously. And yeah, the advice that I'm going to give people is the same thing that I placed in the article. The first thing is to distance. If you want to learn how to cope with these negative character traits that are loosely labeled minor mental disorders by society, generally speaking, from a psychological perspective, then you need to follow these tips. The first one is distance yourself from the mainstream public. And thereby, I don't mean that you need to go live in a cave like a caveman and so on, but I wouldn't recommend being around people that do nothing for you in terms of your interests, occult-wise as well as otherwise. It's about quality, not quantity. This is something that I apply in my own life, okay? I will freely admit that I have very few friends. Honestly, I have no real friend, and I don't mind that. I much rather prefer being alone because within my current environment, I am literally my best company. And I have never been lonely a day in my life because you need to be on good terms with yourself. Once you love yourself, then you'll never be alone. And I never had any issues in that department. I literally have never been lonely. Another mundane character trait of mine is that I get bored easily, ridiculously easy with mundane affairs and so on. I just get bored easily, but never, not once have I been lonely along the lines of wanting company, but not having access to anyone to hang out with or something similar. No. That never applied to me. That has never applied to me over the course of my life. But my point is that the same thing I apply to myself, I would recommend to any of you watching this, okay? If this subject matter pertains to you as well as from a neutral perspective. Quality, not quantity. It's about the quality of your company, not the quantity of your company. What good does it have? What good is it if you have 1,000 friends, but you barely see any of them, or there is no real connection aside from just saying hi to each other on social media and that's it? Social media is another perfect example, okay? I'm just going to list Facebook as a social media platform. This is just literally for example purposes. Okay, remember back in the day when Facebook just came out, people added each other left and right. Despite the fact that none of us had met each other personally, or the majority of each other had not met each other personally. I was also one of those people, you know. I sent friend requests to people that were complete strangers. The only reason I sent those requests was because me and that person maybe had a couple of things in common. And it's literally the same thing from a different perspective, from the opposite perspective. I received similar friend requests from people that had the same taste in music, people that I had never met in my life, despite the fact that Facebook recommended that you befriend people that you know in person, in real life. But you know, everyone just went ahead and did it anyway. And my point is, that was all quantity. That was all quantity, not quality. Okay? What would define quality in that situation is if you actually knew those people, regardless of whether you knew those people physically or just digitally, whether you got acquainted with each other and you two have a strong bond with each other, or you develop a bond with each other, the same way that you meet people on the street and it starts superficially with common interests and then it goes further from there. That's how you make friends. That's how you even come across acquaintances and further and so on and so forth. That's my point. And it's the same thing online, but my point is quality versus quantity. That's quality. But what happened back then, quantity wise, a lot of people had thousands upon thousands of friends on their friend list, and ask those people whether they knew even one of them. A lot of people didn't even know one of them or had a good bond with one of them. And that's my point. What good does it have? Because that's also what I told people when I purged my own friends list and I had literally 30 or 40 friends left. I said to people, what good does it have to have thousands of friends, so-called friends, quote unquote friends, when you don't even talk to them, you don't interact with these people, you have nothing in common with these people, okay, in terms of a serious bond, something that warrants you being friends on Facebook. And yet you're friends with these people. These people are literally just baggage. That's all that they are. They're like seat fillers or social media seat fillers. And yeah, that's my point in any case. Quality over quantity. It's the same thing in real life, and I'd suggest you apply it. I'd recommend you apply it. It's about quality. I mean, what good are friends if these friends aren't people that you can benefit from, or people that you can't even trust on a superficial level? What good are these friends if all they do is just want to leech off of you or benefit from you in some way without reciprocating anything? And what good are these friends if they display behavior towards you that you simply don't like, behavior that simply is unjustifiable from your perspective or vantage point? No, just the same thing for me. I mean, if I wasn't picky and I did not apply this quality over quantity option, I would have, I think, close to 10 friends. I would literally have close to 10 friends, maybe even more in real life. But no, the reason that I showed all of these so-called friends the door is because of all the aforementioned. Okay, something was wrong with them. I'm not saying you have to be perfect or that people are perfect. We all know that. I'm not perfect. No one is perfect except God. God is the only one that's perfect. But my point is that they simply fell so short of my expectations, what a normal person would consider a friend. In essence, they were like basically leeching parasites. Okay, all they cared about is the fact that, all they cared about is my money, bluntly put, and all the fun stuff that I used to do with them. And I just dumped them when I noticed that, that's the only thing that they are there for. For the rest, they honestly, they don't really have any kind of serious positive reinforcement upon me as an individual. They're not there for me, so to speak. And yeah, that's it in any case. So for me, it's all about quality, not quantity. I would much rather be alone than be with someone someone that simply does not meet your standards. It doesn't matter whether your standards are basic or advanced, as long as your standards are reasonable. And in my environment, it's too much to ask, clearly, to find a normal person like that. Someone that's reasonable, that's a reasonable friend or a reasonable communicator. In any case, that's the example, okay, that I listed, and that's the first thing you should keep in mind: quality, not quantity. Know whom you get involved with, and know whom you socialize with. Okay, and if that person doesn't meet your standards or contributes to your life overall, then what good is that person? Then that person is not a friend or acquaintance or whatever bond you have with that person. And I would suggest literally just doing away with him or her. Okay, even if it means that you have to be alone. Quality, not quantity. The quality of your company matters, not the quantity of your company. The second item is acceptance. You need to accept your negative character traits, similar to your positive ones. If you're brainy, you're gifted, you're smart, you're an intellectual type, you can be proud of that, not display excessive levels of pride, but be proud in a normal way. That is a positive trait of yours, but the negative trait should also be laid emphasis upon. I'm not saying that you should celebrate it, that would be abnormal, to be honest. No one celebrates negativity like that, not in a general way. I'm not saying that you should celebrate neurosis or paranoia or anxiety or the fact that you're delusional, but you need to acknowledge it and accept it, at the very least for yourself. Once you've done that, you need to simply be aware of yourself. And honestly, within a mundane context, I would recommend that if you are someone that you're unaware of it and you want to become more self-aware, thereby being more self-aware of your character traits as a person, positive as well as negative, then I'd suggest, for example, that you, if it's not too much trouble, place a hidden camera, to see the way you behave in daily life, or simply pay more attention to your daily life, even if it means beginning a diary. These are all just examples, okay? Anything that helps you become more self-aware of your life as an individual. Once you place yourself under the microscope and you do so repeatedly, and you start to prod and poke at yourself, metaphorically speaking, then you'll see for yourself that a good deal of enlightenment comes from that. Self-awareness is one of the very first steps on the path to spiritual ascension from a basic perspective. Once you're familiar with yourself, you know who you are in and out, you can accept yourself, okay? You need to accept yourself, and once you do so, then it will be a lot easier to carry all the negativity that you have with you, the negativity that makes up part of who you are. Again, like I said, no one is perfect. People have positive as well as negative character traits in general. Like I said, for me as an example, it's neurosis and delusions. Of course, now I still possess those traits, but I am ridiculously self-aware of those traits. For example, the second I display this kind of behavior, I'm aware of it and I just let it run its course, but it by no way influences my life negatively anymore. Whereas years ago, when I was unaware of it, this had a profound effect on daily life for me. And the neurosis and the delusions literally had a detrimental effect on my life because I made decisions based on delusions. Some decisions I made based on delusions. For example, getting my hopes up in a situation where from a rational point of view or perspective, the situation is a no-go or it's a bust. And yet I still had big expectations because I wasn't able to see things clearly. I didn't have a clarity of mind. So I saw what I wanted to see. That's my point. That's pretty much the definition of delusions or being delusional. Now, I still possess these traits, but I am aware of it. And for me, it's I just ignore it. I've already acknowledged it, so I know it's there. And I just ignore it. That's the best way in my personal situation to cope with it. It's like a mosquito that keeps flying and buzzing around your head. You know that the mosquito is there, but you just ignore it and it goes away eventually, if you will, even if it's only just temporary. Let me see, and yeah, last but not least, the benefits. Again, all things have, generally speaking, have pros and cons. They have benefits as well as drawbacks, and it's also the same for your negative character traits. Your negative character traits also, generally speaking, have benefits, even if you can't see them. You need to really look at them in order to uncover the benefit that they pose to you in your life. The example for me is that my neurosis, for example, I'll get to delusions in a second, 2 examples. First off, my neurosis, me being neurotic, for those of you that don't know what being neurotic is, neurosis is when you have one thought or multiple thoughts, so a series of thoughts play like a loop in your mind, in a loop-like fashion. It doesn't matter, it could be a thought regarding a situation, an event, it can be positive as well as negative. And it could have happened anywhere with you. It could have happened to you, that situation pertaining to that thought, across your entire lifespan. For example, you can become neurotic by having a thought pop up in your head of something that happened 20 years ago, something that was either unpleasant or pleasant, it doesn't matter, or somewhere in between. That's my point. For an example is, for example, you crashing your car 10 years ago. Neurosis means that, for example, the thought all of a sudden pops up in your head and it's 10 years later and the thought keeps playing in your head at random times in the day, at random intervals, and also over a random period of time. For example, for the coming week or the coming 2 weeks, and then it disappears and then it reappears again in a year. For me, it's the same thing, okay? I have so many thoughts going through my mind. Sometimes I'm bombarded with neurotic thoughts over things that happen to me in my life. Admittedly, the majority of these things are negative. They're not really positive. Some of them are positive, but I think 60% of them are negative things that aren't pleasant. Basically, things that boil down to adversity and strife in my life at some point. And they just pop up at random. That's neurosis, okay? And the benefit that neurosis brings with it, honestly, is that neurosis makes me sharper as an individual. Where the average person would overlook something, neurosis attributes to my analytical ability. Instead of being just regularly analytical and just accepting a situation, I look at the situation. Neurosis causes me to look at a situation from multiple angles, multiple times. And it's then that you become more familiar with the situation, and therefore you can also cope with it better. An example is, for example, you going into a house. The average person just goes into a house and doesn't think about it twice. The person looks around, the person leaves. For example, the edge that neurosis gives me is when I go into a house and I look around and I just leave, and there is something about that house from which I can benefit, or there's something peculiar about it. My mind will keep playing the same thought over again about the house, and thereby it makes it so that what the average person didn't see because he didn't spend time on it, you will see because of neurosis. Neurosis forces you to almost be like a detective and continue to look at a situation or an event, okay, and thereby being able to uncover things that are, generally speaking, overlooked by the average person. Something that the average person overlooks, neurosis causes me as an individual to not overlook it. So it basically makes you hyper analytical. That's also something that I apply in my work, and that's one of the many reasons for why I'm so good at what I do, even if I say so myself. And the other example are delusions, okay? Delusions, in my own personal life, for example, delusions have made me so that I know how to cope with expectations. The average person, generally speaking, has high expectations and repeatedly makes the mistake without learning to place hope in a situation where it's best not to do so. So honestly, for me, generally speaking, I live by a worst case scenario. I have conditioned and trained myself with the help of my delusions, or better said, because of my delusions, to simply have no expectations, to basically have my mind be blank when accomplishing or trying to accomplish a goal. That way, I find it that way you simply can't be disappointed. In such a context or in such a fashion, you can't possibly have your hopes crushed, because that has happened to me before in the past. My delusions caused me to have tremendous hopes and wishes and aspirations, because in a situation or pertaining or relating to a situation where the average person, rationally speaking or thinking, would say, nah, you shouldn't have any real hope of this, or just have your hopes be minimal. But I just immediately started building skyscrapers in my head and started having delusions of grandeur. And what happened? It happened one or two times, okay, that I was sorely disappointed. And the biggest time that happened, that my delusions tricked me into expecting way too much, is I just almost had a nervous breakdown. This was years ago, I think, what, 5-6 years ago? Approximately 5 years ago. Yeah, that's a long time ago, huh? For me, it's a long time ago. And that was honestly when at that time I had grown enough spiritually to the point where I said to myself, now, what I have learned is to literally take everything that I try to accomplish with the worst case scenario attitude. What's the worst case scenario? The worst thing that can happen is that you simply fail. The only thing you ask yourself when trying to accomplish a goal is it worth my time, effort, energy, trouble, and resources? Whether it be material resources or otherwise. Is it worth all the trouble? Worst case scenario is that it's a bust, that you don't accomplish anything. The only question you have to ask yourself, is it worth your time and effort and trouble? If it's worth the trouble, if so, then yeah, sure, go ahead. But if not, then nah, it's best just to skip on it. And yeah, it basically, my delusions have made me super grounded, if you will. I still get delusional thoughts of grandeur, but I just ignore them because I can identify it clearly. I can see it coming a mile away, that these are just delusional thoughts. They're fiction, if you will, and they have nothing to do with reality. And in reality, if I want to accomplish a goal, if I want to start a project, or if I'm busy doing something that can be seen as a goal, or that can be construed as a goal, then I literally apply a worst case scenario. As in, worst case scenario is that nothing happens and that I fail. Fine, I'm fine with that. And more often than not, but by doing that, by having that mindset, by having no expectations whatsoever, more often than not, I'm pleasantly surprised. I mean, I'm ridiculously pleasantly surprised with the tremendous effect of my accomplishment, or how tremendous my accomplishments are in severity. So yeah, that's also what I would advise people. Okay, long story short is that even these so-called mental disorders, these minor disorders, because they're not really disorders. Okay, that's simply a phrase that psychologists and so on have, basically armchair people have dubbed them, but they're not disorders. So in the sense that you need to be hospitalized or you need to go to a clinic for the mentally insane or anything like like that. No, this is normal because there are so many people out there that have these. I've seen it with people without even trying. I've seen people have these traits. So yeah, it's normal, okay? But I just dub them minor mental disorders because I need to call it something. So yeah, last but not least, even these so-called disorders have their benefits, and it's best that you be aware of that and that you exploit that, so to speak, to the fullest. The last thing that I would say, I'll simply close off by saying that you should accept yourself as a whole. Only then will you be able to live up to your full potential. Okay. Only thing that you need to keep in mind is adjust, improvise, and overcome. I know that that's not the same, but I prefer my version. Again, adjust, improvise, overcome. Thanks for watching. Bye.